before we can start spinning up our own VPS and getting set up in DigitalOcean, we're going to have to talk a little bit about SSH, because that's how we're going to actually communicate and work with it. But what is SSH and how does it work? So let's start off with just defining. SSH stands for secure shell. So SSH and secure shell. Now, what do I mean by shell here? Well, whenever you open up a terminal, we get that sort of like that thing with, you know, our cursor underneath, and we can type on it. That's our shell. So we can say it's like bash or ZSH if you're using a Mac, and you know it's a more recent Mac. That is our shell. So we're going to get a remote one into our cloud. So if we imagine we have that cloud over here with our fake server. I say fake, but it's really virtual. So here is Ubuntu. And we have our computer that's sitting over here. And we want to have this sort of shell, but I don't want to be running the shell on my own computer, which is something that we can definitely do. I want to be running these commands in here. So that's where this SSH comes in. And it's really important that the secure part comes in, because if I don't use the secure part, and there is no such thing as like SH for just connecting in. There's another technology that you might find if you're Googling called Telnet, or if you're really old like me, you might remember Telnet. Basically, that would allow us to connect in, but there's no security whatsoever. In this one, everything that we send and receive is encrypted. So we need to figure out like how this works. Like, how does the encryption part actually work? And like, how does it know that it's really us logging in? So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called install SSH keys on our server. And there's actually a whole bunch of algorithms that we can use. The choices have changed over the years. It used to be for the longest time that RSA was the choice, and now it's like ED255 something. We'll go into that a little bit. Now, what when you create your keys on your own system over here, you're going to create a private key and a public key. For the private key, that goes onto your computer and nowhere else. If you expose that, or like you think that somebody might have access to your private key, you need to find out like what the public key pair for that, and destroy it everywhere, because you're compromised and now people can basically pretend to be you wherever, because treat it like a password. It has to be that safe. Now, we're going to take the public key on every system that we want to be able to access. We give them a copy of our public key. Now, based on saying like, hey, this is public, if this gets exposed, that's perfectly fine. It's okay for other people to know that, you know, what this public key is. And that's because you can't generate the private key from the public key, but you can go the other way around. The public key allows somebody who has signed something with the private key to just understand, hey, this is that person. So if this computer, so if I sign like my content with my private key, now this Ubuntu server can read the messages coming in and say, hey, this is signed with this key. Can I like verify the signature with this public key? I can. Okay, I know that it's this person. I can guarantee that we're good. And we haven't had any man-in-the-middle attacks. Great, perfect. But that's not like necessarily like the full encryption thing. Now, Ubuntu can then take our public key and encrypt it with our public key, send the data back to us, and we can decrypt it. So that you might be noticing there's a problem with that. How do I encrypt the stuff to go to the server then? Well, when we first connect in, we're going to get a public key for the Ubuntu server, and then we're going to be able to encrypt stuff heading over to that. It's kind of going to all work behind the scenes for us, and we're not going to have to actually worry about it. It's just going to happen automatically for us, and we're going to be good. As long as we're working with something like OpenSSH and we're using tools like SSH, we can just best assured that things are encrypted and we're good to go. But the most important thing here is that we do have this SSH key. Now, there's one other thing that SSH is going to allow us to do, which is something called passwordless connection. So normally we might think, okay, I'm going to SSH with my username and then put the IP address of this Ubuntu server in, and we're going to go in, and that's going to be great, but that password is actually a liability. Passwords are usually easy to guess. Passwords, like if you let your users choose them, yeah, it's not that great. We can use SSH to change that and make it so we don't even have to have a password. We just say, hey, look, I have my I can sign with my private key. You can verify that it's that one and just let me straight on through. And there we go. We can actually put a password in the key itself, so that way if somebody else even gets the private key, they can't use it without that passphrase. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next video, setting up SSH so that we can use it with our VPSs. And you can even use the same thing with GitHub in order to be able to, download repos and verify that it's you, all without having to use a login and a password for that. So I'll see you in those videos. Bye.